2 Samuel, chapter 18, King James Version. And David numbered the people that were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. And David sent forth a third part of the people under the hand of Joab, and a third part under the hand of Abishai the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third part under the hand of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said unto the people, I will surely go forth with you myself also. But the people answered, Thou shalt not go forth, for if we flee away, they will not care for us, neither if half of us die will they care for us. But now thou art worth 10,000 of us. Therefore now it is better that thou succor us out of the city. And the king said unto them, What seemeth you best I will do. And the king stood by the gate side, and all the people came out by hundreds and by thousands. And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim, where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David, and there was there a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men. For the battle was there scattered over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heaven and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away. And a certain man saw it, and told Joab, and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanged in an oak. And Joab said unto the man that told him, And behold, thou sawest him? And why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 shekels of silver, and a girdle. And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 1,000 shekels of silver in mine hand, yet would I not put forth mine hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged thee, and Abishai, and Ittai, saying, Beware that none touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise I should have wrought falsehood against mine own life. For there is no matter hid from the king, and thou thyself wouldst have set thyself against me. Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand, and thrust them through the heart of Absalom, while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about, and smote Absalom, and slew him. 16. And Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing after Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom, and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very great heap of stones upon him. And all Israel fled every one to his tent. Now Absalom, in his lifetime, had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name, and it is called unto this day Absalom's place. Then said Ahimaaz the son of Zadok, Let me now run, and bear the king tidings, how that the Lord hath avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said unto him, Thou shalt not bear tidings this day, but thou shalt bear tidings another day. But this day thou shalt bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead. Then said Joab to Cushi, Go tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushi bowed himself unto Joab, and ran. Then said Ahimaaz the son of Zadok yet again to Joab, But howsoever, let me, I pray thee, also run after Cushi. And Joab said, Wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing that thou hast no tidings ready? But howsoever, said he, let me run. And he said unto him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain, and overran Cushi. And David sat between the two gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate unto the wall, and lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, a man running alone. And the watchman cried, and told the king. And the king said, If he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came apace and drew near. And the watchman saw another man running. And the watchman called unto the porter, and said, Behold, another man running alone. And the king said, He also bringeth tidings. And the watchman said, Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man, and cometh with good tidings. And Ahimaaz called, and said unto the king, All is well. And he fell down to the earth upon his face before the king, and said, Blessed be the Lord thy God, which hath delivered up the men that lifted up their hand against my lord the king. And the king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant, and me thy servant, I saw a great tumult, but I knew not what it was. And the king said unto him, Turn aside, and stand here. And he turned aside, and stood still. And behold, Cushi came, and Cushi said, Tidings, my lord the king, for the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that ruse up against thee. And the king said unto Cushi, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Cushi answered, The enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate, and wept. And as he went, thus he said, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son.
2 Samuel 18 is a chapter soaked in tragic irony. The king who once fought lions and giants now stands trembling behind a city gate, waiting for news of a son who has become his enemy. The story shows how sin, even when forgiven, can still shape painful consequences, and how love, when mixed with weakness, can blur the lines between justice and mercy. David sends his army out, but his heart is not with strategy or victory, it is with Absalom. 3 times he charges his commanders to deal gently with the young man. This reveals both David's tenderness and his failure as a father. He can command armies, but he cannot command his own emotions. He wants peace without judgment, restoration without discipline. Yet Absalom is not just a rebellious son, he is a traitor threatening the kingdom God entrusted to David. The tension between fatherhood and kingship sits heavy over every movement of the battle. When the fight breaks out in the forest of Ephraim, the terrain itself becomes an instrument of judgment. The forest devours more men than the sword, showing that this is not merely a military conflict, but a divine reckoning. Absalom, with all his beauty and pride, is caught by the head in the branches of a tree, suspended between heaven and earth, unable to go forward or backward. The very hair that symbolized his glory becomes the snare of his ruin. This shows how pride carries within it the seed of destruction. Absalom is trapped by the image he cultivated. This story of God snaring Absalom is similar to Isaac and his son set to be sacrificed. The Lord provided the sacrifice for Isaac, as now the Lord provides the sacrifice for Absalom. The soldier who finds Absalom refuses to kill him because of David's command, revealing loyalty and fear of the king. But Joab, hardened by war and convinced that Absalom will only bring more trouble if spared, takes matters into his own hands. He kills Absalom despite the king's clear wishes. Joab acts as a man of grim realism. He believes the kingdom must be protected, even if the king's heart is broken. This exposes a painful truth. Sometimes leaders around David act decisively because David himself cannot. Joab becomes the instrument of necessary severity, though not of perfect righteousness. Absalom's burial under a heap of stones contrasts sharply with the monument he built for himself. He wanted to preserve his name. Instead, he is remembered in shame. We could say this shows how human attempts at self-glory collapse when set against God's judgment. Absalom's life ends not in honor, but in warning. Absalom cherished this monument and carried it into battle. Then comes the news. The messengers run with eagerness, but their words cannot soften the blow. David does not rejoice in victory. He does not thank God for deliverance. He collapses under grief and cries out for his son. "O Absalom, my son," is not only a father's wail, but the sound of a king who knows that this rebellion grew in the soil of his own failures. We can hear in David's lament both love and regret. David sees Absalom not as the rebel general, but as the child he once held. He would rather have died himself than see his son destroyed. Thus, the parable can be applied to our time. The second messenger to arrive first is the church, who knows the word of God yet do not preach it. David represents the churchgoers wanting to be fed the good news, yet rely on the church instead of the Bible for being fed the word. And the first messenger is the Bible, or the accurate word of God. Yet this grief, though understandable, becomes excessive and damaging. The army that risked their lives for David returns in shame, as if they had done wrong. The king's sorrow drains the victory of its meaning. We would point out that this is what unresolved guilt and uncontrolled emotion can do. They twist even God's deliverance into a moment of despair. David's heart is sincere, but it is not balanced. He mourns Absalom as though Absalom were innocent and the soldiers were guilty. So the chapter becomes a mirror of David's inner life. It shows a man after God's heart who is still a man of deep flaws. It shows how sin can fracture families, how pride can bring ruin, and how love without truth can become weakness. It also shows that God's purposes move forward even through broken people and tragic events. The kingdom is preserved, but at the cost of a son's life and a father's tears. In our mind, this chapter teaches that leadership requires both compassion and courage, that mercy must walk with justice, and that unchecked sorrow can blind us to the grace of God in hard victories.